All righty, guys. Hope everybody has had a good day today. It is Tuesday, May 30th. We took two trades today. One was on the live, one I alerted after. We took a small little loss earlier in the morning, and then we had a really nice win later in the day that we'll go over as well. So looking at the day, going into the day, I did have a bearish bias, but I think I started to gain a more bullish bias when we started to show a little bit more strength near the open. Now, the trade that we took pre-market was not a bad trade, but I do think that I just failed to recognize, again, drawing in this overall range here. I would want to see us go back to discount like my original bias. So zooming into the 5-minute, when we look at NQ, we could see NQ swept this low early in the morning. We had big displacement to the upside. We had our market structure shift, waited for that pullback into that fair value gap. I got in long, and then I ended up getting stopped out at the low. Keep in mind, stop on this was around 27 ticks or points. Not a bad setup. Again, failed to just recognize where we were on the chart, right? Zooming out is the biggest thing. If we zoom out, we can see we're had this big, massive push up. Definitely could see now lower, and that's what I did want to see eventually. So ended up just, having a false bias in that sense. So after that, market didn't really present any other opportunities. Again, the draw on liquidity for ES was these three equal lows. Didn't really get a setup targeting that. Now, yeah, we didn't really get anything. Again, action on ES in the morning wasn't really anything special either that I really cared about. Now, I started to see the play. I actually posted on I actually was talking about Twitter about what my bias was at the time. This was my bias, sell side liquidity, right? Going to be the target. We have that external level, internal level, big move to the downside, displacement. That would be our market structure shift. And then this is the breaker block that we have here. So once we pulled back up into this breaker block, notice on the 30-minute as well, we're continuing to reject this 30-minute fair value gap. So we have a 30-minute fair value gap. We have a breaker block. We have clean displacement to the downside. The draw on liquidity looks clear to me being these equal lows here on NQ. So I was looking to see if I could possibly get an entry targeting the draw on liquidity. Now, once I waited for us to come back up into this breaker block. Also, notice I waited for us to come back into discount as well. If I go from the recent high to the low, you can see we hit discount right here. Once we did, I zoomed into the 1-minute, looked for our scalping model, right? I know the draw is lower. Now what I'm looking for is an SMT and a fair value gap. So looking at ES, we can see ES right here fails to make a new high. NQ sweeps that high, rejecting that breaker block. Once I get displacement down to the downside, I enter in that fair value gap targeting the previous lows. I scaled my first couple contracts right here and then scaled some more here. And then I scaled all out at that low. So this made back all of that previous loss and more. This is the trade that we want to take, right? Letting those winners run. Let it work for us, right? Letting the trade work for us. That is how we want to do it, right? Look at the risk reward on this, 9.4. Now, it's not the trade on this isn't actually 9.4 since I scaled at multiple places. The risk reward's probably somewhere like around here, which is 5, because since I scaled, it would have to be whatever the average is, right? But still, this is how we want to let our trades go, right? We have a clear draw on liquidity, trusting our confluence, right? Trusting our model and just letting the contracts go in our favor, right? Let it work for us. We're in a position, wait for, risk to reward, good risk to reward, enter, and just let the position work for you. That is the best way that we can trade and capitalize on, big moves like this. So this was a beautiful trade that I alerted later in the day. I was up around $2,000 today going, and then we eventually took out that sell side level here. So now looking at going into tomorrow, right? So now that NQ has swept that level here, we've had a big move up, big displacement down. We've swept sell side now, and now we're having big displacement up, have this 15-minute fair value gap, and starting to hold this. So I do believe I want the draw on liquidity to be number one, first that previous high. Now, the reason I want it to be that previous high is because since we've swept that level, we're continuing to hold 15-minute fair value gap. If I zoom in, we've reached discount, right? And OTE. We come down into OTE, reach discount, bounce back up, would want to see the draw now be that previous high. So going into tomorrow, I do want to not focus not necessarily on, smaller time frame, but also zoom out as well, right? Because if we do zoom out back into the 4-hour time frame, look where we are. We still have a lot of room to the downside, right? If I draw in that high to the low here, we have a lot of room to that discount level, right? So I'm going to draw in that 4-hour fair value gap on NQ because I want to see us start to maybe displace back lower to this level. So we have a lot of room back to the downside. So I am going to be bearish going into tomorrow. Since we did sweep this level, we could potentially maybe see higher. Buy side level would be up here. Notice as well, though, something on ES. ES is actually forming relative equal highs. So we do have a clear buy side level on ES. So what we could possibly see, right? We have relative equal lows or relative equal highs here. What we could potentially see now is maybe this being that fake out. Again, looking at a bigger time frame, we have external level being swept. This would now be considered market structure shift. If we go down to a smaller time frame, like a 30-minute, maybe a 15-minute, I don't really see any sort of fair value gap up here. We have this kind of 15-minute that's already been sort of touched into. Again, I'd want to see us either go back to discount of this and then retrace lower, or potentially come up, sweep this high, and then head lower. So going into tomorrow, again, a lot of it depends on what happens in the overnight session. But just from looking at this, there's two ways that I would want to see this happen. And number one is in the overnight session, I'd want to see a little bit more of a bounce, right? Bounce to the highs, and then maybe market opens here. We sweep that level and then look to take the short setup targeting, back down at these lows, right? Since we do have these relative equal highs up here, I would like to see this get swept first, because I don't like trading. If I'm taking a short trade with relative equal highs above us or equal highs above us, most of the time that is against my rules because I want to see those levels getting taken out first, right? So depending what happens in the overnight session, we could maybe see a little bit even more of a sell-off. Notice we have 1 hour fair value gap, 4 hour fair value gap. Now, the reason I'm focused on this 4 hour fair value gap is because this is in discount, right? So if you go from the high to the low, we actually have our discount here. That's what aligns with this. So that's what I'm going to be most likely paying attention to. Right now, again, formation is just it's kind of hard to tell since this 1 hour, we had that big gap up. Now we're starting to consolidate, big move down. Again, a lot of it's going to depend on what happens in the overnight session. Are we going to, bounce back up to these highs, back inside this range, maybe potentially see those highs get swept, or are we going to come back up, reject this, and then potentially see lower? So my bias going into tomorrow is going to be bearish, just from what we've seen today. But again, a lot of it's going to depend on what happens in the overnight session. So can you go over some examples of internal liquidity getting swept? Is it just every recent high? Guys, so internal liquidity versus external liquidity, all it is it depends on whatever time frame you're on. So for example, if I'm on, like, for example, here, let me do this, right? Let me go to a blank chart. That's this. Well, let me go. That's not what I want. Actually, okay, whatever. Okay. Let me just do this. Going to the daily, right? Your internal level is your internal sell side level. It all depends on what time frame you're on, right? Now, if I'm looking at the daily right here, what is my external levels going to be, right? My external levels. It's going to be this and this, right? This is going to be my external level. What are my internal levels going to be? Whatever my sell side levels are inside of this range, right? So all of these, right? And this, right? Because it's all internal. These are external levels, but it all depends on what time frame you're on, right? So even if I zoom in now to the 15-minute, what would my external levels be? This low and this high. What would my internal levels be? This would be my internal buy side level, right? Now, if I zoom in out of the 5-minute now, what's my external levels? My external levels are this high, right? Which is internal on a bigger time frame, but this would be my external level. What would my internal level be? This would be internal sell side, right? Does that make sense? It all depends on what time frame you're on. Do you recommend walking away from the screen after entering a trade? Because I would have banked on the trade y'all took today if I hadn't been watching it the whole time. I got out break even because I thought it was going against me. Yes. If you cannot control your emotion and you do not follow your rules, step away. Put the limit orders in your DOM. Wait for you to get a notification on your phone being that your order has been filled or whatever it is, or you're stopped out, then come back. If you don't have the discipline to sit there and, just wait for it to, do what you want, just walk away. Still refining my entries. Can you draw with the arrows where you would enter once the buy side liquidity gets swept? Say buy side gets swept. Do you look for a break of structure, then a retracement into fair value gap as entry? Yep. So again, normal, again, most of it's going to be depending on the specific example, but normally just what our regular model would look like, right? 2022 ICT model is just this, right? Buy side, swept, internal swept, break of structure, fair value gap, or breaker block targeting low. So, right, this would be buy side being swept. This would be internal buy side being swept. This would be break of structure or market structure shift with displacement, right? And then pull back to fair value gap or breaker block, whatever it is, targeting external or, sell side liquidity, some sort of sell side level. Can you show us how to use DOM for extra confluence? I don't even use DOM for extra confluence, to be honest. Some traders do. I don't. I don't have a good enough DOM. I might switch to Sierra in the future just to have a DOM that I can actually use for order flow. But Edge Pro DOM, you don't really. I mean, you can get some stuff out of it, but I don't really look at it. I try not to overanalyze. I just focus on what works. Anybody have any questions? Can you explain how to properly use and when to use Fib tool? Yeah, so the way that I like to use my Fib is just for discount. So basically, we know markets like to retrace to discount. So when I zoom out like this, and I can see, we've had this, big move to the upside. The reason I would want to see us come down here is because if I draw in my high to the low of this, this range, right, I can see that discount, which is 0.5, half of this range, lies inside this fair value gap. And I know markets like to retrace back to discount. So since we've had this big move up, I'd like to see us retrace back to discount, right? If I zoom in here, and check out, this range right here, and I go from the high to the low, you can see markets retrace to discount and then see higher. And you can use this on any time frame, right? A lot of the time when I take my entries, I'll take off some of my contracts at whatever discount is. So for example, if I enter long, like if I enter some sort of long in this fair value gap, right, and I'm looking to, take partials somewhere or whatever that is, number one, I'd take it first at the buy side, but I'd also draw in discount of this entire range. So I can see discount is this 145 for blah, 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 whatever this is. And this could also be an area where I could start, scaling my contracts. So a lot of it is good for, finding targets and, understanding where markets like to retrace to. Again, looking at this as well, when I see markets pulling back into this breaker block, a lot of the times when we have market structure shift and we're pulling back either to fair value gap, breaker block, whatever it is, right? This is our sell model right here, right? This is exactly what I just drew in. Let me draw in everything so you can get a better understanding, right? So zooming back out to a 1 hour, or let me go to a 30-minute, right? We can see buy side swept, internal swept, displacement down, market structure shift. We have a 1 hour fair value gap, and we have a 1 hour breaker block. Once we pull back into this, notice if I draw in a fib from the high, again, the recent high to the low of this range, right, which was this when we put it in, you can see we've retraced the discount perfectly and then sell right back off, right? So when I go to the 5-minute, you take whatever the recent high is. Right here was this. Go whatever the low is, which was this. You can see we ended up hitting that 0.5 and then instantly rejecting back. Once we retrace back to discount, we then start selling back off. So that's the way I like to use it. And then I also use it for standard deviation, which is something we've gone over a little bit. All of these, -1, -2, -2.5, all of those are considered standard deviation. So what standard deviation is basically you use it for projected targets from whatever the manipulation move is. So if we're looking at the chart right now, and I look at fib, I take whatever the manipulation move is, which is this, right? Because this is the move to take out internal buy side. I'd take this, and this gives me my projected targets for if this was a short, right? Most of the time, you want to see whatever this lies up in this 2 to 2.5 area is what's going to market's most likely going to retrace to. That's kind of a more advanced ICT thing that we'll go over a little bit more in the future. I'll make a video on that. But that's called standard deviation. Thoughts on this I just took? I need more context. Let me zoom in. Where'd you take this? Where did 14424? Where did you take this? Did you take it right here? Here? I mean, I wouldn't take it. No. Again, I don't care to scalp little moves like that unless it's because right now I still think draw is higher for this. Do you think using basic volume profile indicator would be just as useful as TOS heat map? If you know how to use it. And I don't really use bookmap anymore, to be honest. I think I need to not have colored candles on my chart because I understand when I watch you, but the second I look at my charts, my brain is firing so fast trying to find everything. Yep, that's why I use black and white candlesticks. I don't not letting, colors get, emotional. Don't let the colors get in the way. ES have relative equal highs 4243. I think we could be a target for sweep. Yep, I agree. Relative equal highs up here on a bigger time frame. Definitely could see them. That's why I talk about going into tomorrow. I'd want to see potentially a move back up to sweep these highs on ES and then see a move back down if we can, see that sell model once we come up and break that high. Is taking long right now on NQ? No, it's not. Just let the market do its thing. Right. So you need to check on multiple timeframes to see if we break structure. Yes. Again, depends what time frame the model is on as well. Is it safe to say that whenever you see a draw on liquidity get swept, you are looking for a move to the opposite direction as a bias? Depends on the time frame, right? For example, if we look at a bigger time frame or a smaller, if we're too zoomed in, a lot of the times we're going to get swayed to something, right? Like, for example, if we zoom in, right here, and we see, this high being swept right here, and then we try to see if we can take a short after this. But if we zoom out, we know that we have external buy side up here, right? We've come down. Actually, it's kind of a bad example because this is still sell side that I'm still watching because we still have relative equal lows on here. But a lot of the times you have to zoom out and make sure all of those time frames start to align with whatever you're trading, right? But if you are going to trade that model on a smaller time frame, but bigger time frame bias is different, you have to target just the chart, right? You can't hold it. So if the chart is saying, okay, we're bearish on a 5 minute, but we're bullish on a 1 hour, I'm going to have to scalp the 5 minute targeting whatever that internal sell side level is and then take it off because most of the time after that level gets taken, it's just going to go skyrocket back to whatever the original bias is. Yep. So last thing, again, going into tomorrow, just one more time, going over the bias going into tomorrow. I do want to see ES potentially have a move back to the upside and taking out these equal highs. That's probably going to be the biggest thing I'll be waiting for. A lot of my bias, again, is going to depend on how we open tomorrow. In the afternoon, in the after market session, I'd like to see a move to the upside and then a short setup. But I am bearish going into tomorrow because looking at the 4 hour, again, I still think that we have room to go to the downside. We have that market structure shift now pulling back into discount potentially up here. So we'll see if we reject up here and then see lower, but I would like to see these equal highs get taken out. All right. If you take an hour buy side level, what time frame do you want to see breaker structure? So if we were going to take out this high right here, right? We're going to take out this high, right? These two equal highs. I'd want to see it probably. Now, the first thing I'd want to see is I'd want to notice it on the 1 minute, right? I want to see if we do get something on the 1 minute, but most of the time I'd want to see it on like a 3 minute or a 5 minute. NQ bias is the same thing. I'm bearish on NQ, but since we've swept this, we could bounce to the highs now. So, but again, looking at a bigger time frame like the 4 hour, we still have a lot of room back to the downside here. So enjoy the rest of your night, guys. If anybody has any extra questions, feel free. Just at me in the Discord. And I will see you all tomorrow morning. Enjoy the rest of your night, guys. Peace.